I used to think every marriage had its secrets. Little things, harmless things, the kind you can live with. But I was wrong. Because my husband's secret, the one he took to his grave, almost cost me my life. My name is Amelia Hartfield. And I'm about to tell you the story of how I uncovered a secret buried so deep, it took a death, a storm, and a forbidden farm to bring it to light. For 10 years, I believed Daniel and I had the perfect love. We lived in a small town called Bridgestone Hollow, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and gossip traveled faster than the wind. Daniel was known as the gentle farmer. He had these rough, calloused hands that smelled like soil and cedar, yet his touch was always tender when he reached for mine. Every morning, he'd wake up before dawn, brew his coffee, kiss my forehead, and whisper the same words. "Don't ever go to the farm, Amy. Promise me." At first, I thought he was being protective. Maybe there were dangerous tools, or maybe wild animals. But over the years, that warning grew heavier. The way he said it changed, softer, yet almost pleading. Once, I laughed it off. "You act like there's a monster hiding out there," I teased. He looked me dead in the eye and said quietly, "There is." I thought he was joking. I wish he had been. Because the day Daniel died, everything changed. It was a stormy Friday evening. The wind howled so loud it drowned out the sound of my phone ringing. When I finally picked up, the sheriff's voice trembled on the other end. "Mrs. Hartfield, there's been an accident. We found Daniel's truck overturned off County Road 9. I'm so sorry." My knees buckled. I remember the smell of rain and gasoline when I reached the crash site. His truck lay twisted like an empty can. But what haunted me most was where they found him, not in town, not near his usual route. He died near the farm. The one place he forbade me to ever visit. For weeks after his funeral, I couldn't breathe right. I couldn't sleep. Grief has a way of distorting everything, turning memories into knives. But under the pain, something else grew inside me. A question that wouldn't die. What was Daniel doing at that farm that night? Everyone told me to let it go. Move on, Amelia. He's at peace now. Don't dig up pain. But I couldn't. Because Daniel wasn't a liar. He was careful, thoughtful, purposeful. And if he died on that road, he had a reason. Then, one night, I found his journal. It was hidden under the floorboards of his old workshop, wrapped in cloth, covered in dust, like something sacred. Most of the pages were filled with scribbles, farm notes, and supply lists, until the last entry. "If anything happens to me, don't trust them. Go to the farm, Amy. But whatever you do, don't go alone." My heart stopped reading that. Who was them? And what could be so dangerous that he'd die keeping me away from it? That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat by the window, clutching that journal, waiting for dawn. By sunrise, I had made my choice. If the farm took my husband from me, I was going to find out why. The morning I went to the farm, the sky was the color of old steel, gray and heavy, like the world itself was warning me to turn back. I dressed in Daniel's old flannel shirt, the one that still smelled faintly of his cologne, and packed his journal, a flashlight, and a kitchen knife. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but something deep in my gut told me I needed to be ready. Before leaving, I stopped by his workshop one last time. His tools still hung neatly on the wall, each one cleaned and labeled. My fingers grazed across the handles, memories flooding in, his laughter, the way he hummed while fixing things. Then I saw it. Behind his photo frame, the one from our wedding day, was a tiny strip of tape. I peeled it back and found a small, rusted key. Tied to it was a note in Daniel's handwriting. "You'll know where this fits when the time comes." It was like he'd been speaking to me from beyond the grave. The drive to the farm took almost an hour. The closer I got, the more uneasy I felt. The road narrowed into gravel, lined with dead trees and silence. Not even the birds sang. Finally, I saw the gate, tall, old iron with vines crawling up its sides. A massive padlock hung in the middle. I slipped the key into it, my hand trembling. It turned smoothly, like it had been waiting. The gate creaked open, and I stepped onto the property. The first thing that hit me was the smell, a mix of damp soil, oil, and something metallic I couldn't place. The farm itself looked abandoned. The fields were overgrown, and the main barn leaned to one side like it was bowing under the weight of secrets. But then I noticed something odd. Footprints. Fresh ones. Someone else had been there. Recently. I moved quietly, scanning the ground, my heart pounding in my throat. The footprints led straight to the barn door, half open, swinging slowly in the breeze. I hesitated, gripping my flashlight. "Daniel," I whispered. "What were you hiding from me?" The floorboards creaked as I stepped inside. Dust danced in the sunlight seeping through the cracks in the roof. Tools were scattered across a workbench, but what caught my eye was a large pile of hay in the corner, the only thing that looked freshly moved. When I brushed it aside, my flashlight caught a glimpse of something metallic. A latch. I crouched down, heart hammering, and pulled it open. Beneath it was a trap door, leading down into darkness. The air that rose from below was cold, too cold for summer. I could hear faint dripping, like water echoing in a tunnel. For a moment, I thought of turning back. But then I saw Daniel's handwriting again, burned into my mind, "Go to the farm." So I took a deep breath, climbed down the narrow ladder, and stepped into the unknown. The moment my boots hit the ground, I realized this wasn't a cellar. It was a hidden room. Concrete walls. A single table. And shelves lined with files. Hundreds of them. My flashlight landed on a corkboard full of photographs. My blood ran cold. Because in the middle of all those pictures was me. A photograph taken from a distance, me walking home from the store, unaware. And beneath it, written in red ink, Target 09, primary threat. I staggered back, the air leaving my lungs. What the hell was this? Who took those photos? That's when I saw the computer set up in the corner. It was old, but still humming faintly, like someone had used it recently. On the desk, a single folder lay open, filled with documents stamped confidential. Each page mentioned the same name. Blackridge Corporation. I'd never heard of it before. But the deeper I read, the worse it got. There were mentions of classified projects, human surveillance, offshore funding, and eliminations. And at the bottom of one document, my husband's signature. Daniel Hartfield, Field Operations, Unit 4. I couldn't breathe. My husband had worked for them. The man I thought was just a farmer was part of something secret. Something deadly. My hand shook as I flipped through another file, a report detailing covert monitoring of residents in Bridgestone Hollow. Dozens of names. Neighbors. Friends. And every name was marked with a color. Green for neutral. Yellow for potential risk. Red for active threat. Mine was circled in red, bold and heavy. Before I could process it, I heard it, the unmistakable crunch of footsteps above me. Someone was in the barn. I quickly turned off my flashlight, clutching the knife. My heart thundered as the trapdoor creaked. A sliver of light spilled down the stairs. Then a man's voice echoed from above. "You shouldn't be here, Mrs. Hartfield." I froze. The voice was cold. Familiar. And the next thing I saw made my blood run to ice, the barrel of a gun glinting through the light. I can still hear it. The creak of the trapdoor. The slow, deliberate sound of boots on the wooden steps above me. Every instinct screamed hide, but there was nowhere to go. The underground room was small, just concrete walls, metal shelves, and shadows that offered no safety. The man's voice was calm. Too calm. "You weren't supposed to find this place, Mrs. Hartfield." He knew my name. That sent a chill crawling down my spine. I pressed myself against the cold wall, my fingers tightening around the knife handle. The beam of a flashlight swept across the room, cutting through the darkness until it landed on the photo board, the one with my face in the center. He saw it too. "Ah," he murmured, almost amused. "You found Daniel's little collection." "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking but loud enough to echo off the walls. He stepped closer, and for the first time, I saw his face. Late 40s, sharp jawline, a faint scar running from his temple to his mouth, like someone had tried to silence him once and failed. He wore a black field coat, military boots, and an earpiece that flickered faint blue light. "Name's Cole," he said. "I worked with your husband." "Worked with him?" I whispered. "Then why are you here like a thief?" He smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just with the kind of confidence that made my stomach twist. "Because your husband wasn't supposed to turn on us. And you, Mrs. Hartfield," he gestured at the photographs, "weren't supposed to know anything." My heart hammered so loud I could hear it in my ears. "You killed him," I said. He tilted his head. "We didn't kill him. We just made sure he never talked." That was all I needed to hear. I lunged. The blade sliced through the air. He jerked back, barely missing it. The knife grazed his arm, and he cursed, the sound echoing. I bolted. Up the ladder, my lungs burning, heart pounding. I could hear him behind me, boots slamming the metal rungs. When I burst through the trapdoor, the daylight hit me like a slap. I sprinted out of the barn, the gravel crunching beneath my boots. Gunfire cracked. A bullet tore through the wooden post inches from my head. Another whizzed past my shoulder. I didn't stop running. I reached the car, hands shaking as I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. As I sped down the dirt road, I saw him in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway, gun lowered, smirking like this was just the beginning. By the time I reached town, my body was trembling. I went straight to the sheriff's office, the only place that felt remotely safe. Sheriff Donnelly had known Daniel for years. He'd come to our wedding. His wife brought casseroles when Daniel got sick. When I told him what happened, he leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "You're saying someone broke into your husband's old property and shot at you?" "Yes," I shouted. "And he said he worked with Daniel. He knew about the farm, he knew everything." He sighed heavily, rubbing his temple. "Amelia, you've been through a lot. Maybe you're not thinking clearly." "I'm not crazy." I slammed Daniel's journal on his desk. He wrote it himself. "Don't trust them." That's what he said. Don't you see? He knew this would happen. The sheriff's eyes flickered toward the door, then back at me. "Where's the journal now?" "In my bag," I said. His lips curved, not kindly. "Then you need to leave it here. For evidence." My gut twisted. Something about his tone changed. Too measured. Too calm. "You already know about Blackridge, don't you?" I whispered. He didn't answer. But the silence said enough. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. "You were supposed to protect him," I said. "You knew, and you did nothing." He stood, blocking the door. "Mrs. Hartfield, why don't you sit down?" I didn't. I threw the chair into his path, bolted out the side exit, and ran into the street. That's when I realized the truth. This entire town was part of it. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I drove until my gas light blinked red and pulled into an old roadside motel. The neon sign flickered weakly, "Rest Easy Inn." I almost laughed at the irony. Inside, I locked the door, pulled the curtains shut, and spread Daniel's files across the bed. The more I read, the more it made sense, and the more horrifying it became. Daniel had been part of Blackridge Corporation for years, a covert defense organization contracted by the government. On paper, they handled agricultural research. In truth, they experimented with bio-tracking technologies, devices that could monitor entire populations through farming networks, irrigation systems, and food distribution. My husband had tried to expose them. The files showed he'd copied data from their servers, evidence of human rights violations and illegal testing. That's why he bought the farm under a fake company name, to hide what he'd stolen. But he must have known they'd find him eventually. That's why he left me the journal. The key. The warning. And now they were coming for me too. I picked up one photo from the stack. Daniel smiling on the porch, sun in his eyes, that easy laugh I'd fallen in love with. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, tears burning down my cheeks. "We could have run away. We could have started over." Then, under the light, I noticed something strange about the photo. A reflection. In the glass of our window behind him, a blurred shape of a man standing across the street. Watching. They'd been watching us even then. Hours passed. I must have dozed off because a knock at the door jolted me awake. 3 short raps. Firm. I held my breath. "Housekeeping," a woman's voice called. I checked the time, 11:47 p.m. Housekeeping didn't come at midnight. I crept to the window, peering through a slit in the curtain. A black SUV idled in the parking lot. Tinted windows. Engine running. My pulse spiked. "Not again," I whispered. I grabbed the files, shoved them into my bag, and climbed out the bathroom window. The cold air hit me like ice as my bare feet landed on gravel. I ducked behind the dumpsters just as the door to my motel room burst open. Men in black coats poured inside. One of them held up a photo, my wedding picture. I could hear them talking. "She's got the drive," one said. "Then we can't leave her breathing," another replied. I didn't wait to hear more. I ran. Across the field, through the trees, down the embankment, the sound of engines revving behind me. Branches tore at my arms, mud splashing up my legs. My breath came out in gasps, but I didn't stop until I reached an old service road. Headlights flashed. A car was coming. I waved desperately. "Please. Stop." The car screeched to a halt. A woman stepped out, mid-40s, sharp eyes, hair tied back under a cap. She looked at me like she already knew who I was. Amelia Hartfield. I froze. "Who are you?" "A friend of your husband's," she said softly. "Get in before they find you." I didn't know whether to trust her. But the SUVs were getting closer, their lights cutting through the trees. I had no choice. I climbed in. She slammed the gas, and we sped off into the night. For the first few miles, we didn't speak. My hands trembled in my lap, still clutching the bag. "He said this might happen," she murmured finally. I turned to her. "You knew him?" "We worked together once. Name's Clara. He saved my life." "Saved you from what?" "From Blackridge." She drove in silence for a while, eyes locked on the road. "He found out they were using the farms to distribute micro-tracking devices in fertilizers, sensors that could monitor entire rural populations under the guise of soil research. When he tried to leak it, they framed him. Said he stole proprietary tech. He went underground." I felt sick. And the crash. Clara's jaw tightened. Wasn't an accident. I stared at her, my throat closing. He knew they'd kill him. That's why he hid everything at the farm, she said. But if they're after you, it means they haven't found the proof. I pulled out the folder. You mean this? She glanced over, eyes widening. No, that's not it. That's just field data. The proof is digital. Daniel made a backup drive. If we find it, we can bring them down. And you know where it is. She nodded slowly. He left me coordinates before he died. It's not far from here. We drove until dawn, finally stopping near an abandoned post office outside town. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rust. Clara moved a loose tile and pulled out a small metal case. She opened it. Inside was a USB drive, engraved with a single word. Proof. I stared at it, tears filling my eyes. He really thought of everything. But before we could even speak again, the sound of tires screeched outside. Clara's eyes widened. They found us. Gunfire shattered the windows. We hit the floor, glass raining down around us. Run! Clara shouted. Finish what he started. I grabbed the drive and sprinted toward the back exit. Behind me, I heard her yell, then the deafening sound of an explosion. The blast threw me against the alley wall. My ears rang, smoke filling the air. I turned just long enough to see the building engulfed in flames. Clara was gone. My legs shook, my chest tight, but I forced myself to stand. I still had the drive. Daniel's proof. Clara's sacrifice. And a fire burning inside me that nothing could put out. They took my husband. They took my peace. They took everything from me. But they made one mistake. They didn't finish the job. And now, I wasn't just a widow. I was a weapon. I swore right there, standing in the ashes, that I would finish what Daniel started. I would expose every name, every secret, every monster hiding behind Blackridge Corporation. They wanted me silenced. But I was done being quiet. Because sometimes, the most dangerous woman in the world is the one who has nothing left to lose. When the smoke cleared and the sirens faded, I kept the drive tucked against my chest like a talisman. For a while I didn't know whether I was running from the killers or running toward something I hadn't named yet. Grief makes you half-blind, fear makes you fast. Anger makes you precise. Clara had died so I could live. That truth sat heavy in my throat. I owed her more than tears. I owed her the truth. The woman who had found me in the trees that night, Clara, had left footprints I could follow. She'd given me a name, people who had worked with Daniel and broken away. She'd given me hope. And hope was a currency you didn't squander. For the next 2 days I moved like a ghost through Bridgestone Hollow. I changed motels every few hours, paid cash, avoided the main roads. I watched faces. I watched cars. The town that had once felt cozy felt like a nest of vipers. Every smile could be a trap. Every friend could be an informant. On the third night, I got the call. It was a voice I recognized immediately. Low, steady, the kind that belonged to someone who'd seen the world break and kept working anyway. Amelia. Who is this? My voice sounded small. Call me Elias. He didn't offer more. He didn't need to. He said, Daniel told us to wait for you. He said you'd be brave. He was right. There was a pause, like over a cliff. There's a safe house 3 miles north of town. Midnight. Come alone. Don't bring anything that ties you here. I almost laughed out loud. Come alone. My life had become a litany of things I shouldn't do. But I went. The safe house looked like an ordinary farmhouse at first glance. Porch swing, peeling paint, a mailbox that read Harper. I parked down the lane and walked in under cover of trees. The door was already open. Inside, a dozen low-profile faces turned toward me. Men and women of all ages, some with the look of farmers, some with the hard edges of ex-military. They didn't look like a ragtag group, they looked like survivors. At the center of them was Elias, tall, salt and pepper beard, eyes that could find your truth and leave you exposed. "You're Amelia," he said, as if he'd been waiting in the wings of my life. "We've been waiting long enough." He introduced the others. Mara, who had been a data analyst at Blackridge and could make sense of any file. Jonah, an ex-FBI agent with a limp and a clean moral code. Priya, a chemist who'd once been forced to sign off on experiments and then ran when she saw the effects up close. And Marcus, a hacker whose fingers moved on keyboards like an artist with paint. They all had a story, but they all had the same scar: Blackridge. Elias led me to a back room, where a table was laid out with maps, printouts, and a battered laptop. He poured me coffee that tasted like something real, not the bitter motel sludge I'd been surviving on. "We don't do vigilante," Elias said. "We do evidence. We bring proof to those who can't be bought." Daniel was one of us before he disappeared into the soil. He came back with files that could collapse Blackridge. They killed Clara because they are desperate. They'll come harder now. I slid the metal case across the table. "This is it," I said. "Daniel's backup. He trusted me with it." My voice didn't shake. Maybe grief had solidified into purpose. Mara clicked through folders like a priest flipping through scripture. "This drive isn't ordinary," she said. "It's encrypted 3 ways, with a shell that masks its true contents. Whoever made it is meticulous. Whoever he stole it from isn't going to give it up without a war." She looked at me. "Are you ready for that kind of war, Amelia?" I thought of Daniel's smile, the way he tucked his hands into mine when we walked the riverbank, the way he told me not to go to the farm and then died there. I thought of Clara on the floor, smoke curling up around her, shouting, "Finish what he started." "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." Training started that night. I learned how to throw my weight, how to run silent, how to spot a tail, how to dispose of a phone so it couldn't be traced. Jonah took me into an old warehouse and taught me how to move without sound. Marcus taught me how to use burner emails and VPNs and to read the digital footprints people left everywhere. Priya showed me how to detect chemical residues and identify tampering on documents. It was a crash course in survival, and I consumed it like a starving person does food. We planned like we were surgeons mapping a complex operation. The whole point was to turn Blackridge's strength, secrecy and power, into its weakness, arrogance. They had money, they had men with guns, they had institutional protection. We had motive, truth, and the one thing our enemies disregarded: a widow with nothing to lose. Our first move was small and precise: fetch the rest of Daniel's journal pages from the workshop and secure the camera footage from the barn's exterior. The farmhouse where the workshop stood was now under surveillance from Blackridge. We needed to be invisible. Elias and Jonah hit the perimeter at dusk. Jonah's limp made him look slower, but he moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had aged into craft. I was the inside woman. The Beta called me later, half joking, but it didn't feel funny. I would go into town, play the bereaved wife who needed a hammer fixed, and slip the key back into the exact place it had been, then not. The men outside would move in, and we'd have the footage. When the night came, my hands were steady. Adrenaline does that to you. Focus narrows until there is only task. I walked into the workshop, humming a song Daniel used to whistle. The place smelled like oil and memory. I moved like I'd done these chores 1,000 times and then slid the trapdoor open. Jonah and Elias were watching from the woods, radios silent, breath slow. Marcus had set up a small device to capture any wireless camera feed. Mara guided my steps over the earpiece like a director shaping a scene. Inside the cellar, I felt a presence, the evidence of someone else's careful planning. Footprints in the dust, cigarette butts in a tin. Someone had been here since my last visit. I pulled open the drawers, rifled through filing cabinets, and found what we needed. Pages of Daniel's handwriting, notes about meeting coordinates, names crossed out, one phrase repeated: if compromised, burn evidence. Use fail-safe. His last pages had been torn but not finished. I slipped the pages into my bag. As I climbed the ladder, my flashlight caught on the corner of an old monitor. It blinked a frozen image, a shadowed figure stepping into the barn doorway, the same man with the scar. The file timestamp was recent. Jonah's voice crackled in my ear. "They were here an hour ago," he whispered. I moved faster, heart banging, and slipped out into the night. Behind the hedge, the two men ducked me beneath a truck as Blackridge operatives cruised by, searchlights slicing the fields. I held onto Jonah's sleeve until the car passed. For a second, I thought I would pass out from the strain, but Jonah's grip steadied me. We hadn't snatched the whole prize, the drive remained intact, and we'd bought time, but we had confirmation. Blackridge had eyes on the farm still. They were actively searching. They knew someone had been there. Back at the safe house, we mapped the people named in the files. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. A list of contractors who supplied agricultural improvement devices, a euphemism that made Mara's lips thin. All roads lead to Blackridge's R&D wing, she said. And the funding comes through a trust in Belize that launders money through 3 front companies. We expose the trust, and the R&D gets audited. We leak the connection to the press and the right watchdogs, Elias said. But first we secure the physical proof, servers, backups, that drive. The plan that night was audacious. Infiltrate Blackridge's research center, get in, get out, and copy the servers that backed up the drive's original contents. It was the kind of plan that makes you either a hero or a corpse. I sat on the edge of the table, the weight of it pressing down, and for the first time, I felt fear that wasn't a motor under my skin. This was not a hole-in-the-wall burglary. This was stepping into the belly of something that ate people who opened it. "You don't have to come," Jonah said. He looked at me like he'd counted the cost already. "We can do this without you." "You'll stall them," I said. "You'll buy time. I know their patterns. I know their men. I can get close because they'll still see me as the grieving widow. They'll underestimate me." Elias studied my face. "Do you understand the risk?" he asked. I thought about Clara in the post office, staggered by a blast. I thought about Daniel's hands, how they had built things and broken them in service of a truth that they believed would save people. I thought of the photograph with me labeled target. "Yes," I said. "I understand." We trained until we could move like a single organism. We learned the guard rotations, the suppliers who delivered to Blackridge, the routes the CEOs took to avoid attention. Marcus planted dummy accounts and baited hackers. Priya reverse-engineered the sensor technology to understand what Blackridge's machines could detect. 2 nights before the infiltration, Marcus handed me a small earpiece. "You won't hear it much," he said, "but it'll keep you connected. If anything goes south, leave the site and don't look back." I put it in and felt like I'd given a piece of myself to someone I barely knew. On the night we moved, the sky was a lid of black. We spread out like shadows. I stood at the perimeter in a coat that smelled faintly of Daniel's cologne, a comfort and a camouflage. When Jonah signaled, I walked toward the gates with a slow, grieving step, as if I were a woman returning to the place of all her memories. The guard at the kiosk glanced up, recognized my face from the files, and waved me through. I felt a cold thrill. They did not expect the widow to move like a ghost through their den. Inside, the lights were clinical, bright, and too clean. Cameras watched everywhere. I breathed shallowly, counting footsteps, moving with intent. Behind me, unseen, the team slipped through vents and service doors. The door to the server room stood like a cathedral entrance. Marcus's fingers flew across a keypad on a handset, and the lock clicked. We were in. What we took that night would not be a rumor. It would be concrete. It would be a chain of evidence that could break bones. And as I stood before the hum of machines, the hum that had fed on secrets for years, I felt Daniel's presence like a hand on my shoulder, not because he was there, but because he had chosen me to finish what he started. We copied their files. We burned the backups. We planted the seeds that would grow into a public conflagration. We left before dawn, but not before a message scrawled on the server room wall in a shaky Sharpie. We remember. When we drove away, my hands were numb. The road ahead wasn't an escape route. It was a charge. Blackridge would respond. They always do. But we had what they feared most now, proof. And proof, as they say, can be a very dangerous thing. When we drove away from the facility that night, I didn't speak for a long time. The wind outside the van whistled through cracked windows, carrying the faint smell of the fields that had once been Daniel's pride. I remember looking out at the horizon and realizing I wasn't looking for dawn anymore. I was waiting for the storm. We had the proof. Mara had the files uploaded onto secure, encrypted servers that none of us could trace even if we wanted to. Elias said we needed to wait, to verify, to let the dust settle before we made our move. But I couldn't sit still. Every breath I took felt like borrowed time. Every beat of my heart said, "They'll come for you, Amelia." And they did. 3 days later, I heard the sound of tires on gravel outside the safe house, slow, deliberate, the kind of approach that told you whoever was behind the wheel wanted to be noticed. I peeked through the curtain and saw him. The scarred man. He stood under the soft wash of moonlight beside a black SUV, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. He didn't move for a while. He just looked at the house, at me. Then he called out, voice calm and clear. "Mrs. Hale," he said. "It's time we talked." Elias motioned for everyone to hold position. Jonah aimed from the second-floor window. Marcus muted the room lights. But I opened the door. Slowly. Deliberately. Because some part of me wanted to see the face of the man who had stolen my peace. "You shouldn't have come here," I said. He smiled faintly. "Neither should you." We stood there, two ghosts bound by a secret grave. "You killed Clara," I said, my voice sharp with rage. "I didn't," he said quietly. "But I could have stopped it." His answer didn't make sense, not yet. "Why are you here?" "Because Daniel made a mistake," he said. "And now you're making the same one." I stiffened. "What mistake?" He took a step forward, and under the porch light, I saw it, regret. Real, human regret. He trusted the wrong person. Before I could respond, there was a sound, a single sharp crack that split the night. The man jerked back, blood blooming from his shoulder. Jonah's rifle had spoken. "Cease." I yelled, but it was too late. The man fell behind the SUV, engine roaring to life. The vehicle tore down the gravel road, taillights fading into the black. I ran forward, heart hammering, but Elias grabbed my wrist. "You don't chase a wolf when you can burn its den," he said. "If he's telling half-truths, he'll come again." And he did. The next morning, the sheriff came calling. He looked different this time, not the friendly lawman I'd known for years, but tired, lined, wary. He removed his hat at the door, eyes scanning the room. "Heard you've been staying out here," he said. "Mind if I come in?" Elias stepped forward. She's not taking visitors. The sheriff's gaze shifted to me. Amelia, we need to talk about what happened at the facility. My breath froze. What facility? He sighed. Don't do that. You think we don't know? You think they didn't report an incident? Security cameras showed you walking in. I held his stare. Then arrest me. He didn't. He just looked. Sorry. I can't help you anymore, Amelia. There's something bigger than me involved now. But if I were you, I'd leave town before they bury you like they buried Daniel. He turned, hat back on, and drove away. When the door shut, Elias swore under his breath. He's compromised. They got to him too. But I wasn't so sure. There was something in the sheriff's voice, a tremor, a warning. Maybe he was still trying to protect me in the only way he could. We doubled our defenses. Marcus rerouted our data streams. Mara fragmented the files into encrypted shards scattered across different accounts. Jonah started sleeping with his gun next to the window. And still, I couldn't sleep. Every night, I heard Daniel's voice in my mind, "Don't go to the farm, Amelia." And every night, I asked myself why. What was there that even he had feared? 3 nights later, I got my answer. I was sitting alone in the safe house kitchen when I heard a faint scratching sound beneath the floorboards, slow, rhythmic. I followed it to the pantry and realized it was coming from below. The cellar hatch. My heart thundered. Elias and Jonah were out scouting. It was just me and the hum of the night. I lifted the hatch and aimed my flashlight down. Someone was there. The scarred man looked up, bleeding but alive, one arm bound with cloth. He raised his hands. "Don't shoot," he said weakly. "I didn't come to fight." I should have called for backup. I should have slammed the hatch and run. But something in his eyes stopped me, not fear, not guilt, but exhaustion. He climbed up slowly, wincing with each step, and sank into a chair. "You think you know what Daniel was doing," he said, "but you don't." "Then tell me," I demanded. He reached into his jacket pocket and slid a small photograph across the table. It was of Daniel, my Daniel, standing beside 3 men in military uniforms. The logo behind them wasn't Blackridge's. It was government. A seal I recognized from Daniel's old ID badge, back when he worked for a defense contractor, years before he retired to the farm. He wasn't stealing from Blackridge, the scarred man said. He was feeding them. Until he realized what they were using his research for. I frowned. And what was that? "Human trials," he said quietly. "Gene modification. Controlled by agricultural chemicals. They weren't making food safer, they were making it a weapon." The words made me feel sick. "That's impossible." "Is it?" He looked at me. They tested it overseas. Crops that could sterilize entire populations if exposed long enough. Daniel found out. He tried to pull out. They threatened you. So he faked an accident report, burned his bridge, and went underground. Until one of our own sold him out. "Who?" I whispered. He hesitated. Then he said it. "Elias." I froze. "You're lying." "Am I?" He slid a second file across the table, a printed email chain between Elias and a Blackridge contact. The language was careful, coded, but the implication clear. Information was being traded for protection. I stared at the pages, heart pounding. Could it be true? Elias, the man who had trained me, saved me, believed in me, a traitor? Before I could speak, headlights flashed outside. The front door creaked. Elias's voice called out, "Amelia? You awake?" The scarred man tensed. "They followed me," he whispered. You have to decide right now who you believe. My breath caught in my throat as Elias stepped inside, gun in hand, eyes scanning. For a split second, his gaze softened when he saw me, then hardened when he saw the scarred man. You, Elias hissed. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, the man countered. And that's when I saw it, not fear, not surprise, but recognition. They knew each other. Deeply. Tell her, Elias, the man said. Tell her what you did. Elias leveled the gun. He's lying, Amelia. He always lies. My mind spun. 2 men. 2 truths. 1 gun. And I was standing between them. In that frozen moment, I thought of Daniel, how he had warned me, how he had died keeping a secret he thought would protect me. If Elias had betrayed him, if this was the truth Daniel died for. I made my choice. When Elias shifted his aim toward the scarred man, I lunged, knocking his arm aside. The gun went off, a deafening roar that shattered a window. The scarred man grabbed the weapon and turned it back, but I shouted, "No. Don't kill him." He hesitated. Elias stumbled back, clutching his side. "You don't understand," he gasped. "I did what I had to do. Blackridge has people in every agency. You can't win by playing fair." "You sold us," I said, trembling. "You sold Daniel." He looked at me then, not angry, not afraid, just tired. Daniel wanted justice. I wanted survival. Turns out, you can't have both. Then he collapsed. By the time Jonah and Mara returned, Elias was gone, vanished into the woods, blood trail fading toward the river. We searched, but he was gone like smoke. The scarred man, whose name I finally learned was Silas, stayed behind. He told us everything, about the experiments, the secret trials, and the coded network Daniel had left behind under the name Project Eden. The drive we had wasn't just evidence. It was access. To the servers. The funding chains. The hidden data vaults that could expose the entire operation. And now, I held the key. The days that followed blurred into one long storm of motion. Jonah and Mara worked non-stop to decrypt the final layer of the drive. Silas coordinated contacts from within, people inside Blackridge who were ready to defect. Every time the news reported another mysterious explosion or corporate data breach, I wondered if it was us, or if they were getting closer. Finally, on a grey morning that felt like the world was holding its breath, Mara cracked the final code. The files opened like a vault. I remember seeing Daniel's name on the first page, and beneath it, a phrase written in his handwriting. "If you're reading this, Amelia, it means you found the truth. Don't mourn me. Finish the fight." And right then, I swore I would. Because I wasn't the grieving widow anymore. I was the weapon he left behind. When I opened Daniel's files, it felt like the whole world shifted beneath my feet. Every secret he had protected, every late-night whisper, every warning not to go to that farm, it all made sense now. The documents were damning. Chemical formulas, maps of testing sites, covert memos between government departments and Blackridge executives, transaction logs showing money routed through agriculture grants to fund biological experiments overseas. But one file was marked differently. It was titled Eden Key, Amelia_H. I clicked it, and there it was, a recording. Daniel's face flickered onto the screen. His eyes looked tired but determined. "Amelia," he began softly, "if you're seeing this, I didn't make it. I knew they'd come for me eventually. But I couldn't let them win. Everything you need to bring them down is on this drive. Elias helped me create it, but I never told him about the encryption tied to your name. Only you can unlock it. Because, my love, I trusted no one else." My throat closed. He smiled faintly. "Do not run. Don't hide. Use what I've left you. You'll find my final message buried in the server logs under the orchard's code. And Amelia, if Elias ever finds you, ask him what Project Seedfall means. Then you'll know the truth. The screen went dark. I sat there in silence for a long time, tears streaming down my face. Daniel had trusted me. He'd built all of this around me. I wasn't the bystander anymore. I was the endgame. Silas leaned over my shoulder, his voice low. We can release this. All of it. But it'll paint targets on our backs. I'm done hiding, I said. They killed Daniel, Clara, and God knows how many others. I want the world to see what they did. Mara nodded grimly. Then we'll go public, but not recklessly. If we leak this through one channel, they'll suppress it. We'll flood them instead. Simultaneous drops. Files, footage, everything, to hundreds of journalists and watchdogs. We'll bury them in truth. Jonah frowned. And what about Elias? My hand tightened on the table. He's still out there. Daniel's message said Project Seedfall. If we find out what that means, we'll find him. That night, while the others prepared the leaks, I returned to the farm. I don't know why. Maybe because that's where it had all started, and because I needed to face the ghost still buried there. The wind whispered through the wheat as I stepped into the barn. The air smelled of rust and dust and the faint echo of my husband's life. I searched every inch of that place, following Daniel's clue, the orchard's code. Behind the far wall, I found it, a false panel. Behind it was a small server node, powered by a generator, still faintly blinking. Daniel's secret link to everything he'd built. I connected it to my laptop and entered the only password that made sense, the orchard. Files opened like doors. At the very bottom was a video file, timestamped 2 days before Daniel's death. He was in this very barn, sitting across from someone off camera. His voice trembled. Elias, I can't do this anymore. They're killing people. If we don't expose this. The camera shifted slightly. And there he was. Elias. You think I don't know that? Elias snapped. You think I want this? You've seen what happens to whistleblowers. We can't stop it from the outside. We need leverage. Leverage? Daniel said bitterly. You're selling information to them. To survive, Daniel. You want to be a martyr. Go ahead. But don't drag your wife into this. You love her, right? Then protect her. Daniel shook his head. You're already too far gone. The screen flickered as Elias drew a gun. Daniel's voice broke. Elias, don't. The video cut to static. I screamed. It was raw, animal, uncontrollable. He hadn't just betrayed Daniel. He'd killed him. When I returned to the safe house, I wasn't the same woman who'd left. I carried something different now. Not just grief, purpose. Silas took one look at me and knew. You found him, didn't you? I nodded, eyes cold. Elias killed Daniel. Jonah slammed his fist against the wall. We should have ended him when we had the chance. Mara exhaled slowly. Then we end him now. He's their inside man. He'll go to Blackridge with the files, try to bury the story before it spreads. No, I said. He's going to hand-deliver himself to us. The next night, we launched Operation Edenfall. Marcus built a false leak, an early version of our files, incomplete but explosive enough to draw attention. Within an hour of release, the world was buzzing. Reporters were calling Blackridge, demanding answers. Stock prices started dipping. And, just as we expected, Elias reached out. A message flashed on my encrypted line. Elias, we need to talk. Stop what you're doing before you destroy everything. Meet me where it began. He meant the farm. Jonah wanted to come. Silas wanted to cover me from the ridge. But I refused. I'm ending this, I said. Alone. The night air was sharp, cold enough to sting. The barn loomed in the darkness, half swallowed by fog. Elias stood there in the doorway, coat billowing in the wind, gun holstered but visible. You shouldn't have watched the video, he said softly. You shouldn't have killed him. He exhaled, eyes weary. You don't understand what Daniel was about to do. He was going to dump everything online, no redactions, no context. That would have caused chaos. Markets collapsing, governments toppling, millions could have died from panic alone. So you shot him? I spat. You chose their side. I chose control, he said. I've spent years trying to keep this monster caged. You think you can just expose it and walk away? You'll destroy everything. Good, I said. Let it burn. He sighed, shaking his head. Then you've made your choice. His hand moved toward the gun. But I was faster. I threw the flash drive Daniel had given me at his feet. That's the real one, I said. The files you never had access to. He hesitated, just long enough. I pulled my own weapon from my coat and leveled it at him. Step away from it. His eyes darkened. You don't have the nerve. I smiled faintly. You taught me to aim, remember? For a long moment, neither of us moved. The wind howled through the rafters like a mourning hymn. Then a voice echoed from the trees. Drop it, Elias. Silas emerged from the shadows, gun trained, Jonah right behind him. Elias froze. So this is how it ends? No, I said quietly. This is how it begins. Jonah cuffed him while Silas picked up the drive. We didn't need to kill him. We needed him alive, for the world to see the face of betrayal. The next morning, every major outlet in the world had the files. Marcus's upload hit over 100 servers in 30 countries simultaneously. There was no taking it back. Headlines blared. Blackridge exposed. Government biochemical scandal rocks nation. Defense contractor tied to illegal human tests. Top officials under investigation after massive leak. And at the center of it all was Daniel Hale, the man they tried to erase. Elias was arrested within hours. The evidence we handed over linked him directly to the assassination and cover-up. For once, justice moved fast. The world finally saw the truth. Weeks later, when the storm settled, I stood again at the farm, sunlight breaking through the clouds. The barn was quiet now, empty, but peaceful. The wheat swayed like waves. Silas joined me, hands in his pockets. You did it, he said. No, I whispered. We did. He smiled faintly. So what now? I looked out toward the horizon. Daniel once said truth is like a seed. It might get buried, but it grows back stronger. I think it's time I plant something new. He nodded. You've earned that peace. As he walked away, I knelt down and pressed Daniel's wedding ring into the soil by the orchard. Rest now, I murmured. Your fight is over. Mine's just begun. Months later, a new foundation was born, the Eden Initiative. Its mission: expose corruption hidden under corporate cover-ups, give whistleblowers protection, and rebuild what truth once meant. The world called me the widow who burned a giant. But I just called myself Amelia. Because I'd finally learned that revenge isn't about destruction. It's about restoration. And as the sun rose over the fields Daniel once loved, I smiled for the first time in years. Justice, I realized, is quiet when it finally arrives. It doesn't roar. It whispers, I'm here. A year later, a letter arrived in the mail, unsigned, unmarked, but familiar. Inside was a single line, typed on an old typewriter. The orchard still grows. D. My hands trembled as I read it. I looked out the window, and for a moment, I could swear I saw him, Daniel, standing at the edge of the fields, smiling. And then the wind carried him away, back into the golden light. A widow's revenge, a nation's reckoning.